Hello there, Aviation Nation. Welcome back to another thrilling episode of Cowboys Vintage Wings. The skies over Europe during World War II were a battleground unlike any other. Amidst the clouds, two iconic aircraft, the American B-17 Flying Fortress and the German Focke-Wulf Fw-190 Würger, clashed in a duel that would shape the course of the air war. The B-17, a symbol of American industrial might, was a four-engine heavy bomber designed to deliver devastating payloads deep into enemy territory. Its German counterpart, the Fw-190, was a single-seat, single-engine fighter renowned for its ruggedness, versatility, and firepower. The clash between these two aircraft represented a fundamental difference in aerial warfare philosophies and tactics. The B-17 embodied the American doctrine of daylight precision bombing, aiming to cripple the German war machine by destroying its industrial heart. The Fw-190, on the other hand, was the Luftwaffe's response to this threat, tasked with intercepting and destroying the bomber formations before they could reach their targets. The encounters between these two aircraft were more than just battles. They were a contest of technology, tactics, and the sheer will of the men who flew them. The B-17, with its 10-man crew and impressive defensive armament, was a formidable opponent. However, it was the Fw-190's speed, maneuverability, and potent firepower that made it a serious threat to the heavily laden bombers. The outcome of these engagements would have a profound impact on the strategic bombing campaign and the ultimate outcome of the war in Europe. A study in contrasts, performance and design philosophies. The B-17 and Fw-190 were products of contrasting design approaches, each optimized for their respective roles. The B-17, a behemoth of its time, was designed for high-altitude, long-range missions. With a wingspan of over 100 feet and a maximum takeoff weight exceeding 30 tons, it could carry a bomb load of up to 8,000 pounds. Its four powerful radial engines gave it a top speed of around 287 miles per hour and a service ceiling of 35,600 feet, allowing it to operate above the effective range of most early war German fighters. In stark contrast, the Fw-190 was a compact, agile fighter designed for speed and maneuverability. Its sleek, radial engine gave it a top speed of over 420 miles per hour at altitude and a service ceiling of 39,000 feet, exceeding that of the B-17. This superior speed and rate of climb were crucial for the Fw-190 to quickly intercept and attack the bomber formations. While the B-17 relied on its defensive armament and formation flying for protection, the Fw-190's strength lay in its offensive capabilities. Armed with a combination of cannons and machine guns, it packed a considerable punch. Its speed and agility allowed it to dictate the terms of engagement, making quick attack runs on the bomber formations before disengaging. These fundamental differences in design and performance characteristics underscore the challenges faced by both sides. The B-17 crews needed to maintain tight formations and rely on their combined firepower to fend off the agile German fighters. The Fw-190 pilots, on the other hand, had to utilize their speed and maneuverability to their advantage, making every attack count against the heavily armed bombers. The Flying Fortress, defensive firepower, and the combat box. The B-17's designers understood that it would be vulnerable to enemy fighters, especially during the long journey to and from the target. To counter this, they equipped the Flying Fortress with an impressive array of defensive armament. 1350 caliber Browning machine guns were strategically positioned throughout the aircraft, covering virtually every angle of attack. The B-17 became known as the Flying Porcupine due to the sheer volume of defensive fire it could unleash. However, even with its formidable firepower, a lone B-17 was vulnerable to determined fighter attacks. To maximize their defensive capabilities, the bombers flew in tight formations known as combat boxes. These formations allowed the bombers to concentrate their firepower, creating a deadly crossfire that could decimate attacking fighters. The combat box, while effective, was not without its drawbacks. It restricted the maneuverability of individual aircraft, making them easier targets for German anti-aircraft artillery. Moreover, Flying in such close proximity increased the risk of mid-air collisions, especially during turbulent weather or when under attack. Despite these risks, the combat box remained the most effective defensive tactic for the B-17s during the early years of the air war over Europe. Section 4. The Butcherbird's Tactics, Speed, Agility, and Hit-and-Run Attacks. The Fw-190, nicknamed the Butcherbird by Allied pilots, was a formidable opponent, ideally suited for intercepting and destroying the heavily laden B-17s. German pilots quickly learned to exploit their aircraft's superior speed and maneuverability, employing hit-and-run tactics to avoid the concentrated defensive fire of the bomber formations. Instead of engaging in prolonged dogfights, which would negate their advantages, the Fw-190 pilots would execute high-speed diving attacks from above or head-on passes, utilizing their cannons and machine guns to inflict maximum damage. After a quick burst, they would use their superior speed to break away and reposition for another attack. To further increase their effectiveness, the Luftwaffe developed specialized tactics for attacking bomber formations. One such tactic involved using a bomber-destroyer variant of the Fw-190, equipped with heavy cannons or even rockets, to break up the bomber formations. Once the formation was disrupted, other Fw-190s would swoop in to pick off the isolated bombers. The Germans also experimented with unconventional tactics, such as using a Schräge music organ configuration, where upward-firing cannons were mounted in the fighter's fuselage. This allowed the Fw-190 to attack the bombers from below, where they were more vulnerable and less likely to return fire. Section 5. Turning the tide. The advent of long-range fighter escorts. The tide began to turn in the air war over Europe with the introduction of long-range fighter escorts for the B-17 bomber formations. Initially, American fighter aircraft like the P-47 Thunderbolt and P-51 Mustang lacked the range to accompany the bombers all the way to their targets and back. This left the B-17s vulnerable to attacks during crucial parts of their missions. However, the development of external fuel tanks and the implementation of innovative fuel-saving tactics, such as the boom and zoom energy-conserving flight profile, significantly extended the range of American fighters. The P-51 in particular proved to be a game-changer. With its exceptional range, speed, and maneuverability, it could effectively counter the Fw-190 and provide much-needed protection for the bombers. The presence of long-range fighter escorts dramatically increased the effectiveness of the American bombing campaign. No longer could the Fw-190s attack the bomber formations with impunity. They now faced a constant threat from the agile American fighters, forcing them into defensive maneuvers and reducing their ability to inflict damage. The skies over Europe were becoming a much more dangerous place for the Luftwaffe. Section 6. Legacy of a Duel: the impact on strategic bombing and air superiority. The clash between the B-17 and the Fw-190 had a profound impact on the air war over Europe. It highlighted the importance of technological innovation, tactical adaptation, and the crucial role of air superiority in achieving strategic objectives. The B-17's ability to deliver devastating payloads deep into enemy territory, while initially challenged by the Fw-190, ultimately proved crucial in crippling the German war machine. The Fw-190, though initially successful in inflicting heavy losses on the unescorted bomber formations, could not ultimately prevent the destruction of German industrial centers and infrastructure. The introduction of long-range fighter escorts shifted the balance of power in the skies, paving the way for the Allied air superiority that proved decisive in the final years of the war. The lessons learned from the B-17 and Fw-190 duel continue to resonate today. The importance of a balanced air force, capable of both offensive and defensive operations, remains paramount. Thank you for joining Cowboy's Vintage Wings on this epic aerial showdown. This is Cowboy signing out. Keep your wings level and your eyes scanning for Focke-Wulfs. Cowboy out.